Because abuse is something. There's abuse that's happened in different parts of my family. There's abuse that happens, and this shit happens everywhere. And the vast majority of people know that they have no real means of getting out of the situation. They would quite frankly be envious of the position that Twigs was in to be able to get out and have be able to sit down with one of the most famous journalists in the world. Do you know FKA Twigs?
Yeah, in general.
Right. Did you see
on SNL?
I don't know. I mean, maybe she's a very successful and popular musician.
Is she from the UK or Chicago?
I don't know exactly. It's kind of like I just know about her presence. I see her name pop up every once in a while.
Yeah. A lot of people rep her on Genius, so that's my main introduction to her music.
Yeah.
What about her?
So basically, her whole thing is, she loves her. She's big. Women love her. Okay, she's British.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So the thing is, but I think in the times I've heard her speak, she sounds like she has a pretty Americanized accent, or maybe I just haven't heard her speak that much. But in any case, the most recent story that's occurred is apparently she had a low-key relationship with Shia LeBouf, whom I'm sure you're familiar with, right?
Yeah.
Right. So apparently they met on a movie set a few years ago, and had this little, rendezvous, whatever, for a year or two. And so she recently did. And so she recently did an interview with Gayle King, but she also first started talking about it maybe like a month or so ago, how the relationship was really abusive. He was physically abusive. He was emotionally, psychologically abusive, which I've been keeping up with, I almost said Frankie Muniz, Shia LaBeouf. Because I've known him. I was like, he was a kid. I was a kid watching him as a professional kid actor, and like, damn, this dude is fucking good. Hope he makes it out.
Even Stevens and shit.
Back to Even Stevens. I'm like, damn, I hope this dude makes it out the other side, because we know how fucked up child actors' lives, child performers' lives can be and shit. And and for a while it seemed like, he's keeping it together and everything, but then he kept having these episodes, right? He kept having these episodes of like having these emotional, psychological breakdowns. And after the accusations, what he said was, I've been abusing myself and everybody around me for years. It's nothing new. Right.
Wow.
Right. And the thing is, and here's the thing, right? And so while there's obviously obviously you're hearing it from the horse's mouth himself, and then you're also, more or less a confirmation, but then also, taking, Twig's side of the story and recognizing that, like, oh, if I was on her side, I'd be like, yo, Shia, he's a talented, quirky, artsy dude, but he's got some fucking issues. I don't think he's the best dating material. But at the same time, she said that, initially that's kind of what drew her in, was the artsy, that very artsy, weirdo, eccentric, the damaged eccentric person, right? Which that's a popular trope and everything, right? And lo and behold, after a year or two or so, and also he gave her an STD.
That's not good.
Right, exactly. And so she's doing this interview with Gayle King and everything, right?
She should change her name to STD Twigs.
Nigga. Stop.
My bad. Oh shit, the cat just stole some food. Hold up. Hey, put that down.
So we gave her STD. So that's just another detail of the story, right? And so it's like, and so I'm definitely like, I definitely feel myself being on FKA Twigs' side and everything. And her whole persona, her whole music career and everything is based on like being into pole dancing. I don't know if she was ever like a stripper or a pole dancer or a sex worker, but it's very much sex positive, very body positive. Excuse me. I think she's, attractive. She's a very, skinny, petite, kind of model-esque physique and whatnot, right? Anyway, the thing that kind of frustrated me though about her initial statement, and then also and then the Gayle King interview, is that she described it, even though it's clear that she was 29 years old when she met Shia, right? Because she's like 31 a year, right? 28 to 29 years old, right? But the way that she described it was that she felt like she was trapped in the situation and that she's a professional dancer. Okay, yeah. Um, but and she incorporates a lot of that into her performances and the music videos and all that shit, right? And anyway, so the thing that frustrated me is that she said that like, oh, he was grooming me and I felt as trapped in this situation. Now, I've known, I'm sure many people listening or that will hear this will have experience with victims of abusive relationships, right? And there's a lot of commonalities that at least when it comes down to like women victims of their boyfriends and husbands and whatnot, right, or baby fathers, that a lot of them, the abusive partner is also the breadwinner, and if they go to jail, saying, or anything else happens to them, then the abused, saying, could also, saying, get fucked over. And so they probably, and so a lot of people end up defaulting to accepting the abuse, as the trade-off, right? And, not having, and that even like getting a getting a restraining order, that's only if the other person actually respects the shit and cares about like violating it. If they don't give a fuck, they'll still pull up on you and everything, right? The reason why that frustrated me and then the whole grooming thing, Nikki? And then the whole grooming thing, because we know that grooming is a real thing, but grooming is something that happens when you're like a kid or a teenager, even if you're like maybe like the most mentally, developed person, maybe your early 20s and something, but it's not something that just happens when you around like 30 years old. It's like, It's like to a certain, it's like, those things frustrated me because, well, let's break them down each, right? So the grooming thing, right? So I kind of clarify why, I feel that way is that I don't see her as being mentally underdeveloped, and I don't see her as being, immature or inexperienced, right?
We should clarify really quickly that you're not victim blaming, but you're just
no, I'm on Twigs.
The context.
Well, no, yeah, I already said that I'm on Twig's side, and that if I was
Nikki who's just joining,
right? If I was in FKA Twigs circle, and she was like, and if I had her ear or whatever, I would be like, yo, avoid Shia, man. Like, he may be a quirky, eccentric, interesting artist, but that damage is going to spill over to everybody else around him. So I'm on his side. But the reason why I'm bringing these things up, why these things bother me, is that because it makes it harder to defend to people who don't understand this shit or who aren't coming with the same openness and receptiveness. Because the thing is, because there are plenty of people who have issue with the things that I just mentioned, but from a much less, but not from a concern for Twigs, but they just want to completely dismiss the accusations and dismiss victimization in general, right? I'm definitely about like, supporting being on Twigs' side in this situation, but it's like you can't go and say something like you were groomed when it's like you were far too developed and mature and experienced. It's like you
read any article about Shia LeBouf from the past 5 or 6 or more years, and
10 years.
Say it right there, like red flag.
Tons of red flags, and then the other issues of like restraining orders and finances. She is a successful musician. She is internationally famous. She has tons of connections within different sectors of the industry and whatnot. If she wants to put 500 people between her, including lawyers and bodyguards and all the any law enforcement, anything else in between, she has the means to do that, or she can get the support backing from somebody else to do that. So it's like all the other, so it's like those things which are normally the trappings of victim of abusive relationships are not things which necessarily pertain to her situation, but she's kind of like alluding to that and leaning into those things, right? Right? She's not really taking, it's not acknowledging the fact that, I liked Shia. I was attracted to these things, and those things were present, but there was also a lot of negative things, and and after a while, I had to say, stop. I had to leave and get away from that shit. It's been dude, there's so many stories, and while it is tragic, it is still at the end of the day, the story of a celebrity's life, and celebrities, are not. But people have got a lot more other shit to worry about beyond, just celebrities in general.
Yeah.
Right. But in any case, but my main point is, the reason why this is frustrating to me isn't because I want to dismiss FKA Twigs' testimony. She said that it was in her, it was in the first statement, not in the Gayle King interview. It was when she first started talking about it. I think it was on Twitter or maybe it was on Instagram Live. Hopefully, maybe I can find a screenshot of it. But I was just like,
There's a lot of words and terminology that I feel get overused.
Yeah.
A lot nowadays with, especially probably because we're all stuck inside and all we have is the internet. But, words like gaslit, like a lot of people throw that word, oh, stop gaslighting me. Like,
yeah.
I don't know, like.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, some people are using it in bad faith. Some people actually don't know all the different connotations of the term that they're using or what it actually comes from. And this is kind of the problem of stuff that kind of existed in very niche circles or academic circles or just very specific subcultures, and then all of a sudden finds a mainstream audience, but it hasn't had time to really, people haven't really taken the time or had the time to understand this shit more in depth, but they have, a term or a word or an expression that is very, tangible and is very catchy and very much expresses an idea that's hard to communicate. But the whole FKA, Twigs thing, I would be like, the thing I would say that's frustrating about it is because those points I just brought up are the same points that other people will bring up, but in order to dismiss Twigs, right? That they would use that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right, Denise. That's the thing that happens is that like they, people don't often realize that they're, in something, but it's like, again, even as a man who dates, saying women and whatnot, it's like, and seeing things about Shia to me is like, I'm definitely I'm just like, yo, like, I don't know if I even want to be in the same room with the dude for 5 or 10 minutes because like you might look at him wrong or bump into him and he, might have a really super negative reaction and shit. Like he just gives that vibe,
Yeah.
But the thing is that like, I'm not thinking about like, I'm not here to like say like to dismiss what she's saying or downplay it, but that these holes that there are shitty people out there asking why she just didn't leave. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That there are people who want to dismiss her claims, who will bring up those same points I just made. So that's the reason. So that's the thing that makes it frustrating, because the thing that was notable about the Gayle King interview was that when Gayle asked the question of, well, why did you stay? Instead of saying that like, oh, I realized it was too late, or, I was attracted to these certain things and not, seeing the red flags. I didn't realize, till a certain point that it was super abusive, or I was willing to put up with certain things, but then it just got to be too much. She just went to, it's not right to ask that question. And it's like, of course, especially somebody who's been victimized like that, you're not going to want to make yourself feel disempowered, saying in that situation, especially when you have, you're doing an interview that's going to be shown around the world, right? And it's something that is really against the persona that you've built up about yourself. But at the same time, most other people are not going to have the privileges and the wealth and the ability to tell their stories like she is. And so, while wanting, while making us want to empathize with the genuine abuse or trauma that she's experienced, it's like you also got to watch it that you don't give shitty people, and that you want to make sure you don't want to give the opposition any tangible ways to poke holes in your story. In this situation, you want anybody who's going to disagree with you to expose themselves as just being a piece of shit who is a just out and out victim blamer, as opposed
this
to
makes me,
yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, it reminds me of the. I almost legit said Juicy Smollett. You saw the Dave Chappelle?
Wait, Juicy Smollett?
Juicy Smollett.
Oh yeah.
The Dave Chappelle bit where he says Juicy Smollett.
Yeah.
There's this French actor,
yeah, Juicy Smollett, yeah.
Have you heard of him? I almost legit said Juicy Smollett, like, and meant it, but no, Jussie Smollett, I think it's like
Smollett, yeah. But what about him?
But it reminds me of that in a way, because it's like people are so desperate for attention nowadays, and it's so easy to end up in the news or to create that story for yourself.
Well, I mean, the difference is that like Jussie Smollett was fucking lying, like straight up. FKA Twigs,
is that
Right.
none of that should happen.
Right, exactly. I mean, but as far as like, being able to broadcast your story, being able to tell it, yeah, we are able to, a lot of people are able to get attention on different narratives, right? Whether for good or for bad. And in the case of Twigs, it's like, because the thing is, I'm somebody who would definitely defend her and be like, don't talk down on Twigs. Don't be like, oh, why didn't she just leave and shit? Like, it's harder than that. At the same time, though, if somebody were to say, oh, my mama was abused and she wished she could leave her abusive boyfriend, but he was paying most of the rent or he was buying most of the groceries and shit like that. And Twigs, saying she's got money, she's got fame, she could get out of that stuff, which to a certain point is a valid criticism. And so that's why it's frustrating to hear to hear that when it's like, yo, that's not a point you should use because that's giving ammunition to people whom have who come from a much more dire situation. There's a different sense of urgency, what I'm saying? And when you bring stuff like that up, or about grooming, R. Kelly was grooming young girls, what I'm saying? And to a certain degree, young women who didn't have many other options in life. Twigs, 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 it's like she is a woman of means and of status.
It's hard to argue the grooming aspect of
exactly. And so it's like, but the thing is that like, that's giving ammunition to the other side. And so there are people who will use that shit, but they won't be coming at it from the angle that I'm coming at. Because abuse is something, there's abuse that's happened in different parts of my family. There's abuse that happens and this shit happens everywhere. And the vast majority of people know that they have no real means of getting out of the situation. They would quite frankly be envious of the position that Twigs was in to be able to get out and have be able to sit down with one of the most famous journalists in the world.